We got Shad White, the auditor, on the line joining us. Auditor, where are you today, man?
Man, I'm rocking and rolling around the Jackson area. I just appreciate that you're willing to have the state auditor on Friday the 13th. The scariest possible interview you could ever do, and I'm glad you did it.
That is awesome. Well, lots of folks got no worries. It's the folks that just don't act right that ought to be scared.
That's right. We've got all this stimulus money coming through Mississippi, and of course, all the local elected officials have questions about it, and plenty of them come up to me and ask questions. And I've realized over time, it's the ones who come up to you and ask questions about how to spend it that you don't have to worry about. It's the other ones that don't come up to you that you're a little bit suspicious of.
That's a good point. Well, you've been busy lately. You're in the news quite a bit. And your team is out there finding all sorts of misuse of taxpayer money. And I know that's not really what the auditor's supposed to be doing, but as part of your duties and as part of just performing your team at least, their normal audit procedures, they encounter this stuff. We can't seem to get rid of it.
Yep, you're right. Well, to your point, Gerard, in an ideal world, we would be finding $0 in waste, fraud, and abuse every single year because there wouldn't be any. But if there is going to be waste, fraud, and abuse, we want to be identifying it. And that's why we have an investigations division at the auditor's office to arrest and assist prosecutors in bringing those who would steal taxpayer funds to accountability. You may have seen a couple of days ago, or last week rather, we released our review of this past year, and we're required to do that every single year, and the numbers don't lie. Our identification of misspent or stolen money this past year was 400% higher than the previous year. So,
wow.
You hate to see that, but also we're glad to be the ones to put a stop to it when it does happen.
Yeah. Well, and you got some folks that still owe some fines, right?
Yep,
that aren't
right.
Paying those either. So what kind of authority does the auditor's office have in those situations?
The regulatory authority that we have is to, when we identify misspending or theft, is to issue that person what we call a demand, which is basically just a letter saying, hey, we've looked at the finances and you owe back X amount of money. You have within 30 days to pay that back, and if you do not pay that back, we will then forward it to the Attorney General's office. And we work with both district attorneys, local district attorneys, the state Attorney General's office, and occasionally federal prosecutors as well. They're the ones really who ultimately have to force someone in court in front of a judge to pay money back if they won't voluntarily pay it back after they get a demand.
I got you. Well, the taxpayers, I can speak, I think, on behalf of them confidently, appreciate the good work that you and your team are doing. But as you and I have talked about even privately, I sure do wish people wouldn't do this stuff. And that's the goal, of course, is to find it when it happens, expose it in the hopes that we're deterring other people from committing similar acts.
That's exactly right. And I'll say a couple of different things. One is, of course, everything that we're describing right now, the credit for all that goes to the team that I work with at the state auditor's office, not me. I mean, I work with 134 very talented individuals, and so they've done all the work that we're talking about. But two, to your point, yes, every time we get a conviction or we issue a demand, I'm very open about talking about where taxpayer dollars spent because I want taxpayers to know. But I also want to create a deterrent in the long run that pushes people to think twice about stealing in the first place. And unfortunately, what we found is every time we have a big case, it seems like 10 or 15 new whistleblower tips come in, especially from the area where the big case is, because people are coming to me and saying, Shad, I honestly did not know that we had a group of people who investigated white-collar crime involving public funds, but now I know, and here's what I need to show you. And so we continue to pick up new cases all the time. That's why those numbers are up. But hopefully over time we start to create that deterrent effect that curbs some of this.
Yeah, it's a good point that we should bring up, too, Auditor, is that from an economic perspective, white-collar crime much outpaces sort of typical kind of violent sort of crime or crime that involves property damage and breach of property, more physical-oriented economic crime. White-collar economic crime is just huge, which is why that folks like you, the FBI, et cetera, other law enforcement and investigative agencies, they look for people that understand systems and accounting and finance, because that's where all the crime's happening.
That's exactly right. And I'll give you, without providing much detail, I'll give you an example. So today my team is going to make an arrest at some point of an individual in Mississippi. This individual is going to end up owing back probably around $100,000 or more. And I was trying to think back, when was the last time I read a story about somebody in that county robbing a gas station for $100,000? You don't see that. The reason is that there's not that much money to be had in some of these smaller and sometimes even violent crimes. But white-collar crime, even when it's not violent, is very serious because of the large dollar amounts. And I personally think that if somebody's going to steal with a pen and a pad and with a tie on, that they should be held accountable just like if somebody walked into the gas station and robbed the gas station.
Absolutely. And, of course, we're not condoning any form of crime. It's all bad.
That's right.
We're just making the point that from a dollar value perspective, white-collar crime is just excessive relative and a much higher number relative to more traditional type theft when somebody just breaks into a property and takes stuff. But all right, so this Medicaid deal that that just hit the news, and of course you've had some detractors that have lashed out at you as well, and I thought you handled that rather eloquently and masterfully. Appreciate that. But, you and I discussed this a bit privately. This has been going on for a long time, as you know, and to a great extent, it is my view at least that those involved in some of those processes tend to look the other way.
But to your point, we audited Medicaid this year just like we do every year. So we're required by federal law to audit Medicaid. It's the biggest federal program that operates in Mississippi. And when we did it this year, we did the same thing really that we did last year, which is to take a look at state income tax returns and try to tell if people who are on Medicaid lied to Medicaid about how much money they were making in order to be eligible for the program. And if they had actually told their state income tax return, they put on their state income tax return a higher amount of income. And when we start looking at that, we see problems that most folks know have existed for a long time. We did find some people who were misleading Medicaid, it looked like, in order to be on the program. So
I think we lost him.
Yeah. I thought it was me at first, but I'm good. We'll see if we can get Shad back. Just while we're getting back, Medicaid, as a part of our overall spending here in Mississippi, it's just under $1 billion out of a $5.5 billion budget. All right, Shad, we got you back. Go ahead.
That's probably my fault.
No problem.
We ended up auditing and looking at about 180 individuals, and roughly 5% of those folks had told Medicaid they made one amount, but their income, according to their most recent income tax return, was much higher. So if you extrapolate that across the whole population of Medicaid, you're talking about, potentially $144 maybe $1 million of savings every year. And to me, it just shows that, now is the time to really get serious about fraud in the Medicaid program and putting a stop to it. Medicaid could not do the analysis that we did legally, so I think it's worth it for them to have the legal authority to do something like this too. And it's just time to get serious about this because taxpayers want their money going to where it is legally allowed to go, and not to people who are lying to get it.
Yeah. Exactly. This is the question, though, and I know you talked about this somewhat in your writing about this. The income eligibility verification. Why isn't that just done with a little bit more diligence? I don't get that.
Yeah, I think over time it will be done with more diligence. I think you have to give Medicaid additional legal authority to do the kinds of things we did.
Yeah.
So, if you walked in today, Gerard, and you said, hey, I've got a grass cutting business, I make $1,000, Medicaid is going to ask for your state income tax return to prove that that is the truth.
Okay.
But if you lie about that, then we're in trouble, and then it gets harder to check unless you automatically check